15 seconds to finish up their thought, after which I ring the bell and we move on to the next question. So my hand goes up, it means you have 15 seconds left, we ring the bell and we move on to the next question. We're going to go for about 2 hours this evening, and I'd also like to say hello and greetings to everybody who's watching us on the live stream tonight on the CBC Nova Scotia webpage, the CBC Nova Scotia YouTube page. Our debate from Tuesday night at Centre 200 got 11,000 views up till this afternoon, so it's nice to see that people are taking advantage of that opportunity to see your candidates exchanging ideas. You're with us from the Civic Centre at the Port Hawkesbury at the Bearhead Room on Thursday night, April the 10th. 2025 if you're watching us live, and if not, you're watching us a little bit later on. Speaking of the audience role is very important. It's important that you're here, whether you're here in person or you're watching us on the live stream, because democracy, it's important for it to be not just done, but seen to be done. And that being said, this is a debate. It is not a campaign event. So while I encourage you to show your support of the candidates on stage, I'd ask you to keep it reasonable, please, and absolutely no shouting or interrupting someone while they're speaking. The point of tonight is to have a free-flowing conversation about the ideas that are important in this riding and in this election across the country, across the province, and in eastern Nova Scotia. Anything that interferes with that is counterproductive. Some people here may have made up their minds already, but lots of people haven't, and lots of people who are watching on the live stream have not. So we're looking for an open political debate, and we want to be inclusive to everyone. Keep in mind, not everybody on this stage has a campaign team or a well-funded campaign behind them. So the idea is to make everyone comfortable expressing the ideas that motivated them to put their name forward. So I appreciate your cooperation on that. On that front, I'm giving you the rare opportunity for the next 2 hours of your life not to have to respond to texts, messages, notifications, phone calls. So if, like me, you could put your phone on Do Not Disturb or airplane mode, or even better, blissfully turn it off for the next 2 hours, I, the campaign team, the technical team, and CBC would be very much appreciative for that. So without further delay, let's dive into your debate for the new riding of Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. Your candidates from left to right across the stage, as determined by random draw earlier this evening. Joanna Clark for the New Democratic Party. Rebecca Wall for the running as an independent in this election. Jaime Battiste for the Liberal Party. Ryan Smyth for the People's Party of Canada, and Allan MacMaster for the Conservatives. Definitely applause is encouraged. To start tonight, before we get to the policy stuff, our first question is a simple one that gets it to the heart of why you're here tonight and why you put your name on the ballot. So for our first question, we're going to get 1 minute from each of you, starting with Joanna, to tell us why you think you would make a good member of Parliament. Why do you deserve the support of people in this riding? So Joanna Clark, why do you think you'd make a good member of Parliament? You have 1 minute to start us off.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to CBC and all of you for being here. I believe I would be a strong member of Parliament because I bring a unique combination of lived experience, professional dedication, and a deep commitment to our community. As a teacher, a mother, and someone who also works in the service industry, I don't just hear about the challenges people face, I live them. I understand the pressures families are under and the importance of fair wages and affordable living. That perspective allows me to bring a grounded, empathetic voice to Parliament. But lived experience is only part of it. I've also worked in policy and advocacy. During my time with the Canadian Federation of Students Nova Scotia, I helped lead successful campaigns to make post-secondary education more accessible. This is a riding built by workers, and far too often their voices are left behind. The NDP is the party that stands for working people, and I want to be an MP who listens, who shows up, and who never forgets who I work for.
Thank you very much, Joanna Clark, and you gave me a chance to make sure the bell works. That's excellent. Rebecca Wall, tell us why you think you'd make a good MP.
I grew up in Cape Breton for a few years coming from Ontario. I had an entrepreneur spirit, and I realized quite quickly what it took to live on an island with resilience without much, coming from a family with not much. So I took those skills, and like many youths, out-migration, which is an issue in Cape Breton Island, I moved out west I was married, I had children, took my class 1 for driving truck, really applied myself to some skills that would benefit me as a mother, and moved back in 2016 to start my life here. Alberta was a little beyond my budget, so I moved back and there was something pulling at me in Cape Breton. It was the catalyst that became the path for growth. I realized as a mother, working in the industry and just reaching out with it as a media consultant, that I had met so many people that had inspired me for the resilience and what we could produce in Cape Breton Island.
Very good. Rebecca Wall, thank you. Jaime Battiste, what makes you think you'd be a good member of Parliament?
Gwe, bonjour, Kamala Haushef, greetings. Thanks for the question, Steve. Because I can deliver. As a member of Parliament, I've shown that I've been able to deliver for Sydney, Victoria. We're seeing now, for the first time in generations, an economic boom happening in Cape Breton. And I believe it's because of collaboration between the federal government, the provincial government, the municipal government, and Migma. My experience is that I'm a law school graduate. I'm former professor at Cape Breton University. I negotiated the treaty education MOU for our province. I'm also a proud father, former boxer, and part of the ECMA winning band Second Generation for the past 25 years. I was the only Atlantic voice in the Liberal leadership race. I think I bring a strong voice for the Atlantic, but ultimately I stepped aside because I think I realized then what everyone's realizing now, that Mark Carney is the right person for this right moment. His experience in handling crisis is what we need, and he's going to stand up to Trump and ensure we keep our country, Canada, strong.
Jaime Battiste, thank you. What about you, Ryan Smyth of the People's Party of Canada? Why do you think you'd make a good MP?
I would make a good MP because I know that nobody is qualified to run your life other than you. You're the best person to do that. And in order for that to happen, you need to be empowered and you need more freedom. Freedom leads to wealth, health, a happy and prosperous society. And I can't do that for you. You really have to do it, but you need the freedom to do it. And I would work very hard to give you as much latitude and freedom as possible. Repeal bad laws that restrict your ability to go out and make a decent living.
Ryan Smyth, thank you very much. Allan MacMaster, 1 minute.
People have a choice in this election. You can vote Tory, you can vote Liberal, you can vote for one of the other parties, but people have another choice. They can vote for the best candidate on the stage here tonight to represent Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish, our people, our issues, our needs in the Parliament in Ottawa. My Liberal friend here tonight cannot run on the record of his government. The reason we are having this election is because Canadians have lost confidence in that government. In contrast, I will gladly run on my record of being a provincial MLA, elected 4 times over 15 years, finishing as Deputy Premier, Minister of Finance and Treasury Board, Minister of Communities, Culture, Tourism and Heritage. I have done this job, and if you ask the people of Inverness, they will tell you I've done it well. So you know what you will get when you vote for me. I ask for your support. Vote for Allan MacMaster.
Allan MacMaster of the Conservatives on why he thinks he deserves your vote as a member of Parliament. We're going to open it up now to 3.5 minutes of open discussion and debate directed by me. A reminder to the candidates to keep your mind on the one point you want to make if you want in on the conversation. It's not like we're going back and forth in a set order, except we're starting off with Joanna Clark with the NDP like we started off the first round. Get my attention if you'd like in, just to remind you how it works. So on why you'd make a good MP, continue some of your thoughts, Joanna Clark.
Yeah, so thanks. I think also, as I was saying before, it's important to have real voices in Parliament and people who are who understand what's actually going on right now. And I have been somebody who has, I've actually run twice provincially as well. And so I have experience with people in this riding, some of the riding, of course, with the new boundaries, and I've been also able to talk with a lot of people elsewhere in this riding, and so I think that I have a good beat on what's happening.
Very good. Jaime Battiste and then Allan. Jaime?
Ultimately, this election is coming down to who is the best person to negotiate for our country? Who's the best person to stand up to Donald Trump? Now, what we have in the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, is someone who's got his PhD in economics, who's managed to get the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England through crises. On the other side of the coin, we have Pierre Poilievre, who doesn't fail to mention how broken our country is, who has taken every single one of his playbooks from Donald Trump.
Okay, we're going to move on. Allan MacMaster, you might be able to finish that thought later. Jaime, Allan?
You
And then
are my
Joanna.
first choice. I want to run in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. I'm excited about representing this area. You are the second choice of the Liberal candidate who wanted to run in the Sydney riding.
I will give you a chance to respond to that, Jaime, then Joanna. Jaime?
It's a false narrative. Politics is about loyalty. I was loyal to my constituents until the last day when I was asked to run in this riding. It's where I live. It's a beautiful riding. It's where generations of Migma, including my mother and my grandmother, were raised. I'm going to represent Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish with loyalty and commitment like I did Sydney Victoria.
Joanna Clark of the NDP, you wanted in?
Yeah, I just want to challenge the narrative here that the only problem that we're facing right now is tariffs with Donald Trump. Absolutely we are. But we know that there were a lot of systems that were fractured prior to that, and we still need to worry about what people are going to face long after those tariffs are taken care of, or when we have policies, we still have people who need help. And so I think that that's why we need a voice that knows that.
Rebecca Wall, then Allan MacMaster.
Running
Rebecca?
as independent, we have 11 seats right now in Parliament, 2 of those coming from this riding and Cape Breton. We don't have a large influence in this riding. So an independent voice takes the voice of the people. It's about your voice, not mine. It's about listening to you and taking you to Parliament, not me going to Parliament.
Back to you, Allan MacMaster with the Conservatives.
You will hear a lot of fear tonight out of the Liberal candidate. They don't want you thinking back to the poor governance they provided up until just a couple of months ago. That's what this debate is about for him. This is about trying to sell you a leader based on a motive of fear.
We're going back to Jaime, and then you, Ryan. Jaime?
We're selling people on our track record of caring for Canadians, whether it's dental care, child care, pharmacare, or the child care benefit. We've shown that we've cared for Cape Bretoners. Tory times were tough times for Cape Breton and the Atlantic. Don't forget that.
All right, we've wandered a bit. It's a good conversation, though, but we are asking what makes you think you'd make a good MP. Ryan Smyth, you wanted in here?
Yeah, trying to make the election about Trump is just silly. You know, he's bombastic, and the whole tariff thing, you know, that's going to blow over. You know, we need to focus on Canada specifically, and what we can do here. Good.
All right, very good. You have one last quick word, Rebecca? We're almost out of time. Very brief.
Trump is one thing, but it's also another thing to focus on. We don't have to worry about south of the border if our focus is on food and local here.
Very good. Thank you all very much. We close discussion on that topic at this point. And I will reassure you that we will have more opportunity to talk about President Trump a little bit later on in the evening. All right, so next up, we're going to start with Rebecca Wall to answer this question. This election is about who we want to represent us locally, but as already has been mentioned, it's also about who would be the best person at the national level to take the country into the next chapter. So a question about that choice for you. Why is the leader of your party the leader for you and the best leader for Canada right now? This is a conversation about the best leader for the country and why this person is the leader for you. Now, of course, our only independent candidate is the one who's going to launch us into this conversation. You can interpret this whatever way you like. Perhaps you want to talk about why no leader is the leader for you, or who do you think would be the best PM. But we'll let you deal with that. Rebecca Wall, 1 minute on who's the best person to take us forward.
I feel it's our opportunity in this riding, Cape Breton and Antigonish. This is the time to flip the narrative. This is the time for the plot twist. They weren't expecting this. From the East Coast, no less. 11 seats in Parliament. We're not known as the wealthy province by any means. But we have what it takes. We know what it's like to grow up, resilience, build economy, keep our youths here, bring attraction, bring professionals here. We know what it takes to get through anything and make the impossible possible. So if we take our energies and focus on local here, the people's voice, we won't have the same fear south of the border when it comes to Trump. Being an independent, the reason I decided, I did a lot of poly tests, I come out, kind of centrist, liberal, balanced harmony, but being an independent allows me to leverage that. It allows me less restrictions. It allows me to listen and take your voice to Parliament in a strong.
All right, we have 10 seconds left. You care to say which leader you think should be Prime Minister?
Well, I formatted a government, but I won't talk about that. I felt I was going to be the Prime Minister.
All right, we're out of time. That's not going to happen this time around, I think, but you never know in the future. Jaime Battiste, why is Mark Carney the leader for you and the leader for the country?
Because he's equally caring and brilliant. He got a hockey scholarship to go to Harvard, where he did business. He's got his PhD in economics. He's got a proven track record of getting people through crises. And don't kid yourself. What we have right now is a crisis. With markets in turmoil, we have an American president who is trying to make us into the 51st state. He's threatening tariffs on our fisheries, our forestry, our farms, our auto sector. Do you want someone who's going to stand up to that in a strong way, or someone who's emulated him and, like Pierre Poilievre, who says Canada's broken, wants to defund the CBC, wants to cut housing programs, and continues to allow pollution to be free in this country?
Jaime Battiste, thank you very much. We're moving on to Ryan Smyth with the People's Party of Canada. Why is Maxime Bernier your guy?
Maxime is principled. The People's Party of Canada is principled. It's not run like the progressive New Liberals based on polling. Basing your policy on polling is a recipe for disaster. We've got decades of disaster in government and through this kind of problem. What we need to do is we need a focused, principled approach, and Maxime is principled.
Very good, thank you very much. You have a bit of time left too, Ryan. You don't have to answer this, but if Maxime is not the Prime Minister, which is most likely, it must be said, who do you think should be?
Groucho Marx.
A dog
could do better.
Allan MacMaster, why Pierre Poilievre for you and for the country right now?
We have experienced in recent years some of the worst inflation we've seen in a generation. People struggling to make ends meet. Jaime Battiste, I expect, voted along with the other Nova Scotia MPs 23 times to increase the carbon tax. When people were hurting, they were piling on with their carbon tax, which, by the way, did nothing for the environment. Emissions in this province went up per capita after the tax went on. Pierre Poilievre fought that fight. That tax is now gone, at least for now. I can guarantee you it'll never come back under a Conservative government. And I will tell you that Pierre is the choice of young people. He's the choice of your children and your grandchildren. I see it at the door every day. They have seen enough of the Liberals. They want real change, and they like what they hear from us. Pierre is the choice of working people in the trades, people working in our resources, and people working in fishing, farming, and forestry.
That's your minute. Thank you very much. Allan MacMaster of the Conservative Party of Canada. Finishing this first round of 1 minute, Joanna Clark of the NDP. Why Jagmeet Singh for now and for the future and for you?
I think that Jagmeet Singh is a great leader for Canada. I believe in his platform. I believe in his policies. One thing that I do think makes him unique is that you never hear him saying, because I struggled and survived, everyone else should. He believes the opposite. He believes if one person is struggling, that is too much. He's formed platforms to support workers, everyday workers, not just people that he deems hard workers, workers. And our riding is made of workers, fishers, farmers, service industries. We have all workers here, and they need policies that are going to help them. And that's all I have to say.
That's fine. No problem at all. Thank you very much, Joanna Clark, with the New Democratic Party of Canada, whose leader is Jagmeet Singh. That ends the first round. We're going to open this up now to an open discussion and debate. Get my attention if you'd like to get in on the conversation on why your leader is the leader for you, why your leader is the leader for the country, or who you think would make the best Prime Minister in this country. We're going to start with you, Rebecca Wall.
Sorry, what was the question?
We're talking about leaders and who the best leader is. You don't have to start if you don't want, but we start with.
The best leaders. Well, I'm going to say I'm so focused on local. I'm focused on the leaders locally and hearing from the people. So I'm going to pass on that question and listen to what everyone else has to
no
say on that
problem.
one.
You might want in later. Jaime Battiste?
Conservative cuts won't strengthen our country. We have a leader in Mark Carney who's going to invest in our country, invest in the CBC. Unlike the Conservatives who have been saying that they're going to defund CBC, unlike the Conservatives who says, candidates who say that we don't need more federal funding in Cape Breton in the previous debate. We need everything that the federal government can deliver for us. We're going to continue to supporting ACOA. We're going to continue supporting small business, while the Conservatives are only offering cuts.
Allan MacMaster of the Conservatives?
I'm proud that the Conservatives are offering income tax cuts, because that's going to help. That's going to help people who have been struggling. I met a woman the other day who had to take a second job because of what his government did to our economy. She had to take a second job to pay for her groceries because she was running them up on her credit card. That's what people have been living with, and his government has been out of touch.
Would you like to respond, Jaime, and then Joanna Clark with the NDP? Jaime Battiste?
Our government has put more people out of poverty than any government in our history. We put 1 million people out of poverty with our programs directed at ensuring that we're providing affordable childcare, the Canada Child Benefit, pharmacare, dental care. Liberals will show that we continue to care about Cape Breton.
All right, let's get Joanna Clark of the NDP on this, on leadership.
So I just want to remind people that part of the reason that there is pharmacare, dental care, etc., childcare, is because the NDP also pushed for that. And we can see what they did. They weren't even in a position of power, and they still pushed to work for the people. And so that shows that even not in power, they'll work for the people.
Ryan Smyth of the PPC.
Mark Carney was a train wreck for the Bank of England. They had some of the highest inflation in Europe. I think it was peaking at around somewhere around like 11%. He's going to do the same thing to Canada. 11% inflation is going to destroy people's lives.
Rebecca Wall, you wanted it on this, then
Well,
Joanna Clark. Rebecca?
I find if we take a pragmatic approach to this and a local approach, I mean, we can get distracted talking politics and big politics, but if we don't focus locally on what is going on in our local region, food security, supporting local farms, I'm curious, why is milk? Why can't we sell milk to our neighbors? So that's, just one of many questions.
We're running short on time. Joanna Clark of the NDP.
I also just want to challenge the giving income tax cuts. We need to remember that a lot of those cuts are for people who already have money to save or money to spend. The NDP is looking at cutting things where everybody will benefit, like a GST cut on groceries. Everybody buys groceries, or at least when they can, that's the priority. And so that would give savings to everybody, not just the wealthy.
One quick last word to Jaime and Allan. Very briefly, Jaime. Very briefly.
We need stable, serious leadership, not slogans, and that's
All
why
right.
Mark Carney is
Allan,
the person
very
for this.
briefly.
$900 a year in the hands of the average Canadian worker.
All right, we're going to end it there, right under the wire. Thank you all very much for discussion on that question on your respective leaders. All right, his name has already come up a couple of times tonight, so let's put it out there. On a dominant theme of the campaign, I'm going to invoke a former Prime Minister with stretching a metaphor a little bit. Let's talk about the elephant that is not in the room. So in the last 8 days, world markets tanked and then spiked with the tariff announcements coming out of the United States. There have been threats from the president of economic annexation and a desire to see Canada as the 51st state. Starting us off in this conversation is going to be you, Jaime Battiste, with the Liberals. Our question to you, what would be your approach to dealing with Donald Trump on Canada's relationship with the United States and with Donald Trump? 1 minute from each of you, beginning with Jaime Battiste.
Mark Carney has the background to push back financially against Donald Trump. He's shown immediately that Trump will take him seriously. Where, on the other hand, we've seen Pierre Poilievre play by Donald Trump's handbook. I've watched it for the last 3 years. Everything that Trump has done, Pierre Poilievre has done. How do you expect Pierre Poilievre to stand up to Donald Trump when he's looked up to him, when he's copied him, when he's emulated everything he's done? What we have with Pierre Poilievre is MAGA light, and that's the truth of this situation. We need a serious leader. We need someone like Mark Carney with proven experience.
Jaime Battiste, thank you very much. On dealing with Trump, Ryan Smyth of the People's Party.
This is the guy who literally wrote The Art of the Deal. He's a businessman. He's not a politician. This bit about tariffs, it's going to blow over. It's a negotiating tactic. He's pushing people. He's looking to bring people to him to negotiate. That's all it is. It's not what it's being blown up to be. It's not the end of the world. As for the 51st state, unfortunately, the average Canadian makes less than the average American in the poorest American state. This isn't good. What's in your best economic interest? To be part of the US or to be part of Canada? It's insane, but his suggestion of the 51st state, it would actually benefit people here. I'm not saying I like it.
Thank you
But
very
I'm
much,
saying the
Ryan Smyth.
economic reality.
It's a legitimate point of view to have, and we're creating an environment tonight where you can express your point of view. So I really did ask you at the beginning to not interrupt people where they're talking, and I would very much appreciate it if we would go along with that so that we could have a good conversation tonight. Thank you very much. And do enjoy the rest of the evening. And I understand where the passion comes from, for sure. Not trying to tamp that down. Thank you, Ryan Smyth. Of the People's Party of Canada. On Donald Trump, dealing with Donald Trump, and where to go with our relationship with the United States, Allan MacMaster of the Conservatives.
Do you think President Trump will actually listen to anybody? I don't think he will. There is one group of people he will listen to, and they're the people we need to get to, because the USA is too big of a trading partner for us to give up. We've been too closely linked for 35 years. One leader is not going to solve President Trump. We all know that. We've got paper down the road. Most of it's going to the U.S. We've got a fishery just about to get underway. A good percentage is going to the U.S. We can't lose them. The solution to this problem is cooler heads must prevail. And we need to get to the American voters, the same people that voted for him, so they understand with tariffs, their prices are going up, and we need to work together to strengthen both of our economies. We need a win-win, because that's the only way we're going to get anywhere with President Trump.
Allan MacMaster on Trump. Joanna Clark of the NDP, 1 minute.
Of course, dealing with Trump is a big question on everybody's mind for this election. And I think what we really need to remember is that we need a party who's ready to support the workers that will be affected inevitably by those tariffs that he may or may not put in, or when he will put them in. And as mentioned, you know, we have fishermen who are getting ready to start their season. We have people who will inevitably be affected. Also, I think of the paper mill as well. 90% of their product going to the States is a little scary for those workers. So we need to make sure that there's somebody who's thinking about those workers and what will happen to them when their incomes are affected. So we've seen that the hope is that we'll have time to make reform on unemployment insurance if people do face layoffs. Then we know that that pressure will not be on them while they're trying to figure out what their next move is.
Joanna Clark of the New Democratic Party, thank you very much. On dealing with Donald Trump and the relationship with the United States, Rebecca Wall running as an independent.
Trump is a polarized figure. We know that. Independents, especially in a place like Cape Breton-Island, Nova Scotia, rural Nova Scotia, Antigonish, this is our opportunity to detach and become independent. Common goals, inclusivity, collaboration, that is what is going to override the concerns and the worries about south of the border. Inclusive common goals, he's polarized. We need to focus on here. And the future direction, that's something that's beyond us. Advocating for more here, local needs will bring us closer. The impact on local issues, independence, that's where it's at, is taking us and becoming independent with our goals, breaking down those barriers. And by the way, Trump's dickering and negotiating on land that's not even his to dicker with.
Rebecca Wall, thank you very much. That ends our first round of 1 minute each on the topic of Donald Trump and how to deal with our relationship with the United States. Kicking off now 3.5 minutes of open discussion and debate on this point, starting with you, Jaime Battiste.
Well, I'm scared of what Allan just said, is that no, Trump won't listen to anyone, so why bother? What Canadians are asking for is leadership right now. And if Trump won't listen to him, you make him listen. And we have in Mark Carney someone who will make them listen. We can't capitulate to his demands, and that's what Canadians are asking. That's why elbows up is everywhere in Canada. That's why unity is up everywhere in Canada, because Canada wants a leader who's going to fight for them and stand up to them.
Over to you, Allan MacMaster.
I'm not scared of anybody. And I don't buy the story that is, you're going to hear it all night, over and over and over again. Be scared of Trump, like my leader, vote for us. Forget about thinking about how awful our government has been. Don't look at that. Look at how bad Trump is. It's really simple, it's really quick, and if you'll just follow that to the polls, like a bunch of lemmings, everything will be better.
Rebecca
it's
Wall?
not going to work.
Rebecca Wall.
There is There's 1,800 sovereign nations on Turtle Island. There's 52 in Canada. Sovereign nations, ill-new people, have been here long before we are. Trump hasn't even considered that. He hasn't brought them to the table. This is where Canada was birthed in Confederation, peace and treaty friendship. The Migma were not brought into that conversation. This is not his land to make deals on. He has to bring and include them to the table.
Ryan Smyth of the People's Party.
We really need to focus on Canada and not Trump. Imposing tariffs is just shooting yourself in the foot. It's a bad idea. It never works. It always costs the people. The American people are going to pay for his policies. Canadians are going to pay for his policies. Everybody's going to suffer except for the people at the top. So we need to just forget that. The tariffs aren't going to last. Let's focus on Canada.
Allan MacMaster.
I agree. I think some of the other candidates said we need to be a more self-reliant country. We need to help businesses diversify so that they're not all in one country selling to the U.S., that they have other countries. And I will reiterate, it's going to take cooler heads to prevail here, and it's not going to be one person that's going to convince Donald Trump to change his mind.
On Trump and dealing with the situation with the U.S., Jaime Battiste, back to you, the Liberals.
And that's why Prime Minister Carney brought all the premiers together, because we need a Team Canada approach on here. We need to look at unity, but we also need seeing provincial leaders all across Canada standing up to Donald Trump and pushing back economically. We need to push back, and we don't need someone who's going to follow his playbook and follow his game plan, just like Pierre Poilievre's done over the past 2 years.
Anyone else want in on this?
I just think it's ridiculous. I mean, to think that one leader is going to convince Donald Trump, it's ridiculous. We need a much more robust approach than that. We've got to get down. Oh, standing up. It's about getting down to the Americans. They're the same as us down there. They're buying things, and when they go to buy something, they're not going to want to pay 25% more for it.
All right, we'll end this on one quick note. Rebecca, you want it in? We're almost out of time.
It's a collaborative approach. The only way we're going to bring the barriers down is by coming together.
All right, very good. On Donald Trump, that wraps up that conversation. Thank you all very much. Take a breath, take a moment, have a drink of water. You're watching the CBC live stream from Port Hawkesbury at the Civic Centre at the Bearhead Room. My name is Steve Sutherland. I'm with CBC Cape Breton. This is the CBC candidates debate for the federal riding of Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish with your candidates Joanna Clark of the NDP, independent candidate Rebecca Wall, Jaime Battiste of the Liberals, Ryan Smyth of the People Party, Allan MacMaster of the Conservatives looking for your vote. You're watching us in the CBC Nova Scotia YouTube channel and CBC online at cbc.ca/ns on Thursday, the 10th of April, 2025. If you missed our debate on Tuesday at Centre 200, you can find that online, probably if you scroll down from the feed you're getting right now after you're done. All right, up next, we're going to talk about affordability. So another dominant theme of this campaign is that Canada has just emerged from an extended period of high inflation, just in time to contend with another potential onset of high inflation in the trade war we've been talking about with the United States. We're starting to see another spike in prices of basic essentials, for instance, at the grocery store. A new survey from the Mental Health Society says that nearly half of Canadians reported increased anxiety over the past month, with most saying that the primary cause is the rising cost of living. We're going to start with you, Ryan, with the People's Party with this question. 1 minute from each of you. Our question: what will you do as a Member of Parliament to address issues around affordability and cost of living in Cape Breton and in eastern Nova Scotia in the riding of Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish? 1 minute starting with you, Ryan Smyth.
I'd like to start out with a quote from Bill Clinton's 1992 campaign. It's the economy, stupid. It's always about the economy. Most issues boil down to that. We need to address the economy, how to get it running. You get the economy running with more jobs and whatnot. Right now, government is standing in the way of a lot, and we can create opportunity by getting rid of silly laws and regulations. Check the People's Party's platform, and you will see consistently throughout it, it addresses the economy. It addresses your pocketbook, lower taxes, et cetera, et cetera. Good.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. When I give the signal, of course, you can keep going for another 15 seconds if you want. Just reiterate that. But we can save time too. That's good as well. On affordability, the cost of living, and what action you would take on it, Allan MacMaster of the Conservative Party. 1 minute.
Well, the first action we took, and I did it while I was as a provincial MLA, was taking a strong stand against the carbon tax. And it's gone, for now at least. I have a question for Mr. Battiste here in a moment on that. But we have to get people's taxes lower, even at the lowest income tax levels. There's people out there that are working hard. They've not been able, their checks are not keeping up with their bills. Let's lower their taxes so they have a little more in their pocket. We have to get the economy going, as Ryan said. We have a plan to have a national energy corridor, shovel-ready zones. We have to start steering people towards good-paying jobs and skilled trades. If the economy is moving, it's raising tax revenues for government to support things like health care. Instead of spending a bunch of money, like the Liberals have done, and none of us are feeling any better off for it, and now we're paying more interest on that debt that they've doubled than they are sending around to the provinces to run the healthcare system.
Allan MacMaster on affordability. Joanna Clark of the NDP.
Thank you. You obviously read off some stats there, so I don't think I need to repeat them, but we know that costs are skyrocketing. People are spending too much on rent, people are spending too much on groceries, and yet they're coming home with less and less. We even have, maybe seniors who are skipping medication just to stretch their dollar, which is unacceptable. Like mentioned before, the GST cut that the NDP is proposing is an equitable solution to help everybody save. When people are making priorities, often they're prioritizing necessities like groceries, heating, internet, cell phone. We know that those things are what keep us connected. And so by having something that benefits everybody, not just the wealthy, that's going to help everybody have some savings. Another thing that is really important is the preventative care measures that the NDP is proposing. We'll see less strain on emergency care in our hospitals, for example. I'm almost out of time there, so.
You had 2 seconds left. Very
Okay.
good. Thank you. On affordability and cost of living and what you would do to address those issues for the constituents of Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish, independent candidate Rebecca Wall.
Well, currently my home in Ilmadam is being used for someone that's having difficulty with housing challenges, and even though I face my own challenges at this time, but my vision is preventing homelessness. I'll prioritize a comprehensive prevention strategy. Working with partnerships in the local area, financial literacy, job training, and mental health support, creating affordable rental housing. I propose a mixed-use initiative combining public and private funding to develop deeply affordable rental units along with regional housing trust fund to maintain affordability. Supportive housing for vulnerable populations. I'll expand supportive housing options for individuals with mental health and substance use challenges, integrating health services and counseling into housing models. Extending support to rural counties, I will advocate for tailored programs addressing the unique needs of rural communities, including those getting out of jail, and upholding a rights-based approach. This is all in my vision and alignment.
Rebecca Wall, thank you. 1 minute from Jaime Battiste on affordability and cost of living.
Mark Carney will invest in Canada. That's the biggest difference, is that what we're going to see with Pierre Poilievre is cuts, conservative cuts. What we're going to see with Mark Carney is investing in our communities. Mark Carney on day one canceled the divisive carbon tax and replaced it with a better environmental plan. He's got a middle-class tax cut that's going to save your average family $825 a year. And we're going to continue on the work in supporting Cape Bretoners, from everything from affordable childcare to pharmacare to dental care to supporting seniors with the increase to the GIS. What we're going to continue to do is look out for Cape Bretoners. And let's not forget that Cape Breton is going through an economic boom based on the investments that our party has made. And what we have with the Conservatives is talking about cuts. We can't cut our way to prosperity, and you can't pollute your way to a better planet.
Jaime Battiste, thank you. On to our segment on open discussion and debate on the topic of affordability and cost of living and most effective action in this riding to take care of that. Starting off with Ryan Smyth and then a free-flowing conversation directed by me. If you want in, get my attention. We're going to go for 3.5 minutes on affordability. Starting with you, Ryan, with the People's Party.
I had a bit of a laugh there about Mark Carney's going to be investing. He's not going to be investing. You're going to be doing investing from him. He's going to take your money and do whatever he wants. It's your money in the first place. Cuts, that's your money. back in your pocket. So
All right, Allan MacMaster and then Jaime Battiste. Allan?
The best assets to own during inflationary times are commodities. Our country is full of them. We need a government who will develop them.
Jaime
And,
Battiste. Go ahead quickly.
And this government's been standing in the way of them. Ironically, his leader, Mr. Carney, is happy to develop the commodities he owns and the company he's involved with, but yet he will stand in the way of our commodity development, which will give people good jobs and provide the tax revenues to help people who need help.
Over to you, Jaime Battiste.
Mark Carney believes in a Team Canada approach. He's going to work with premiers, he's going to work with municipalities, he's going to work with Indigenous people. That's his promise. The only way we move forward together in Canada is together. We can't force that. Pierre Poilievre is all about forcing development, forcing growth, because all he does is support the big oil and gas industries that fund him.
Joanna Clark of the NDP.
Sorry, I'm walking back a little bit, but one thing I do want to point out, obviously everybody was happier to see those lower gas prices. What happened to the families who were budgeting according to the rebate that they were getting and that's now gone? So when we make cuts or we make changes, where are we replacing to ensure that people aren't now suffering because of a loss of something else?
And you don't have to apologize for walking back. You can say whatever you like, Allan MacMaster.
Mr. Carney has said he wants to focus on big industrial polluters and to penalize those who are doing the most polluting. But who buys their products? We do. So can Mr. Battiste confirm that Mr. Carney plans to keep on with a carbon tax on those big polluters to hide the carbon tax in the price of everything we buy at a time when we've experienced so much inflation that the carbon tax will still be there, making things even more expensive?
Jaime Battiste on the industrial pricing on carbon.
Well, we're going to need a little bit more than 30 seconds to talk about an actual environment plan, but the Conservatives don't have a plan for the environment. And if you don't have a plan for the environment, you don't have the plan for the economy. And I'm looking forward to talking about Mark Carney's environmental plan when you give me at least a minute.
Yep, and we will be getting to climate change in a minute. We're going to go to Joanna and Rebecca in a second, but a quick response from Allan.
Carbon tax did nothing for the environment, and that was their best idea.
Joanna Clark of the NDP.
So I did just do a little bit of research before this. So we know that the big companies do have the money to pay the taxes that they should. So Canadians pay $40 per ton in carbon tax, while Suncor, who is a big company, pays about $2.10 per ton. So let's think about where that balance goes.
Okay, Rebecca Wall.
And while carbon is one approach with the Liberals, it's often disproportionate with low-income families. As an independent, I advocate for solutions that promote sustainability without adding financial burdens to low-income and vulnerable populations. And we can achieve that with emission reductions through innovation and community-driven partnerships and initiatives.
And that's it for that question on the cost of living and affordability. Thanks to all five. And it seems like a good time to roll into a conversation about climate change and climate change approaches. So a question now on the issue of climate change. We're going to be starting with you, Allan, on this, with 1 minute from each candidate as we cycle through our random order as determined earlier today. What is your assessment of Canada's climate change obligations? What do you think is the best approach to carbon reduction, and by what mechanism should any such reduction be accomplished? So on climate action, what action would your government take? Allan MacMaster of the Conservative Party.
I'm glad we're reevaluating trade right now because it also affects the environment. Has globalism been good for the environment? Do you notice everything that you buy is either starting to break or it's already broken? Remember when things were made well here and they lasted, giving you better value for your dollar? Now we live in a world with disposable goods and a throwaway culture that we are forced to accept. All that mining for materials, manufacturing poor quality goods over and over, and shipping them around the world is not helping our environment. Have you seen the commercial with the washing machines lined up along the curb to be thrown out? It may serve economic interests of the super wealthy, but is not helping the environment. And it is affecting the value we get for our dollar. One thing I want to work on if I'm elected as your MP is looking at consumer standards to protect consumers with minimum life standards for products and right to fix them.
So you're ducking under the bell there. Allan MacMaster of the Conservative Party on climate change, climate action. So we're asking, what's your assessment of our climate change obligations? What action would you take as MP and your government take? Joanna Clark of the New Democratic Party, 1 minute.
Climate crisis isn't some distant threat anymore. It's happening right now, and we're feeling its effects right here in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. From more frequent and intense storms to coastal erosion threatening our communities, we need urgent action, not more empty promises. Canada currently has the worst climate action record in the G7. We continue to hand out billions of dollars to big oil. Just think about this, $12 billion of our tax is going to corporations that don't need it. They continue to make their highest profits while people in the middle class continue to struggle. What's important is to invest in climate adaptation and disaster preparedness and protect our coastal communities, which we're full of here in this riding.
Very good, Joanna Clark, thank you. On climate action, Rebecca Wall.
The climate is going to change. You know, if you've studied world history, there's nothing that we can ultimately do about it on a globe, but we can do something with our own personal actions and our habits here in rural Nova Scotia. Keep things local. You know, I'm curious about what steps we can take as individuals to help this situation. Encourage people to take responsibility for consumption habits. Sustainable forestry, get the young people out in the woods there with the elders. I mean, there's older generation here that know what to do with this land. They came here, they made something out of it, out of nothing. Cutting down trees have a major impact on climate and ecosystems. It's non-negotiable, food and water. Trees absorb carbon, they cool the land, retain water, and protect the soil. Deforestation disrupts our rainfall patterns. It's local that we can do something here with our habits.
Thank you very much. On climate, Jaime Battiste of the Liberals.
And let's be clear, the climate crisis is here. I agree with Joanna. I've gone to the United Nations and heard firsthand how they've told us that northern and coastal communities are the first to feel the impacts. We've seen the floods, we've seen fires, we've seen hurricanes, we've seen record snowfalls. You have many parties in the House that say climate crisis is here, it's real. The Conservatives deny that climate change is happening. And they deny that progress is being made. In fact, greenhouse gas emissions have never been lower since 1994, and that's because of what we're doing to address climate change. What Mark Carney's plan is to tax the big polluters, use that money from that tax to incentivize better choices, and ensuring through regulation that the big polluters won't pass that down to the consumers. It's a genius plan. It's one that works. Where Pure Polyev continues to say, big polluters, go for it. Climate change isn't real. Allan, do you believe climate change is real?
I'm about to speak on your genius plans in a moment.
Okay.
So that's
That
a
is
no?
1 minute. We are going to have an opportunity for you gentlemen to further the discussion in our open conversation right after we hear 1 minute from Ryan Smyth of the People's Party on climate action.
The People's Party would eliminate carbon taxes, eliminate all the subsidies and all the grants that are just wasting your tax dollars. When it comes to the climate, during the Cambrian explosion, CO2 was around between 7,000 and 8,000 parts per million. We're currently at around a little over 400 parts per million. At 150 parts per million, all life on Earth dies. The idea that carbon is bad for carbon-based life forms is a joke. Climate does change the Milankovitch cycles. The real threats are actually more like solar ejections. You know, so you have electromagnetic waves that basically destroy all electronics on Earth. There are much bigger worries than some made-up fantasy.
Ryan Smyth, thank you very much for 1 minute on climate change and climate action. We're now going to go to an open discussion debate among the candidates, starting with you, Allan MacMaster, on Canada's climate change obligations and what mechanism is best to handle those obligations if you agree with them. Allan MacMaster.
Back to the genius Liberal plans for the environment. They want to subsidize Teslas for very wealthy people. They want to put up car chargers everywhere. I saw a bunch of them in Ingonish Beach the other day. They were sitting out in the freezing cold by themselves. They want to invest in school buses and PEI. I think they have about 40 of them. I think only 3 of them actually work in our cold weather. These are how the Liberals are using your tax dollars along with the carbon tax to help the environment. It's not working.
Okay.
I care about the environment, and I will come up with real solutions that
All
help
right.
people.
No plan from there on the Conservatives. You criticize, but you don't have any plan. Just like you did when you were a provincial cabinet minister. There's a reason there was a carbon tax in
Hold
place
on.
in Nova Scotia.
Okay,
is
hold on.
because
Everyone hold on a second. Jaime, go ahead.
There's a reason why there was a carbon tax in Nova Scotia is because his government, his provincial government, couldn't come to Ottawa, roll up their sleeves, and get a plan in place that worked for Nova Scotia. So the federal backstop was in place. Just like they didn't have a plan in Nova Scotia, he doesn't have a plan for this country.
So,
What they had was to cost people money.
so Allan,
You have yet to
Okay.
say what your plan is.
So,
Does
Allan
that mean
Mc-
because you
I
don't
will.
agree? Do you believe climate change is real?
All right, Jaime. What is your plan?
Cap and trade, that's what he's referring to. You know what?
Is climate change real?
Cap and
Can you do
trade
that?
would have
Can you
seen
say-
Nova
Okay,
Scotia.
so hold on a second now. I'm going to take these seconds off and add them in the end. Is climate change real? Would you like to address that?
Cap and trade would have put Nova Scotia in a marketplace with Quebec and California.
It's okay. Well, let's let Allan talk now.
I see he's getting a little flustered.
It's our future. I want to look my children in the eye and say, when I was on this stage, I protected their future.
You gave them the carbon tax.
All right, the clock is on. So I would like everybody except Allan to be quiet for a second and tell us what your plan is.
Cap and trade would have put Nova Scotia in a marketplace with Quebec and California. Quebec has all kinds of hydropower. We would have been exporting our wealth. We would have been paying for credits. The price of them was completely unknown. It would change based on new entrants. We didn't know what new entrants would come in. We would never enter into such a risk like that. And if it was going to go away, which we hear it is now, how hard would it be to extract it of a cap and trade system?
Joanna Clark of the NDP.
One part of the question that I think we're forgetting about is what is our obligation, and it is to the people. And right now we have, we do have a climate crisis, but we need to offer support to people to help them through that. So one thing the NDP is promising is to help people ensure that their homes are more energy efficient, helping jobs or sectors that are looking to change into a more green way of working, offering support to help bridge that gap, because sometimes the cost is the issue. But if we have support in place, then we will be able to make a just transition to something that will help with the climate crisis.
Okay, we're going to go Jaime, then Ryan with the People's Party, then Allan. Jaime Battiste with the Liberals.
When asked 5 times, the Conservative candidate refuses to say climate change is real. In Cape Breton, we know that climate change is real. If you don't have a plan for the environment, you don't have a plan for the economy.
All right, we're going to get to you, Ryan Smyth, because you haven't been in on this yet.
The Liberal plan is a plan to loot your pocketbook and nothing more. Math is a real thing. There's digital signal processing and signal processing. Ants produce 10 times more CO2 than all of human activity. What this means mathematically is that you can't separate the signal from the noise, and you cannot say anything about human created carbon dioxide.
Almost out of time. Last word to Allan MacMaster.
Climate change, absolutely. Climate change is happening all the time. I want to give you one quick idea. Members here had mentioned food and the importance of it. I think government should be working with local farmers and other producers to ensure we have affordable access to it.
We are out of time. Those were the bonus seconds that I tacked on. Next up, we're going to bring it local. So we've been talking a lot about wide-ranging issues and policies on a national level a lot of the evening so far. So we're asking you to bring it local now and think about this riding that you're hoping to represent. We are asking you, what are a couple of your most pressing priorities for Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish, and what action will you take as an MP to address them? We're going back to the beginning here with you, Joanna, to start us off. What are a couple of your most pressing priorities for Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish, and what action would you take on those priorities? 1 minute from each of you, beginning with the NDP. Joanna Clark?
I think there are 3 top issues that kind of unite all the communities in this riding, especially when we think about rural communities. So those would be connectivity, housing, and access to healthcare. I think starting off with the time I have talking about housing, because I know that it is very important, and it's definitely an expense that a lot of people are struggling with and that's taking up most of their budget. So the NDP is really proposing strong solutions that will help both renters and owners. So I think that is very important because we know not everybody owns a home. And so we do need protections for renters as well.
Thank you very much, Joanna Clark. On priorities for Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish, independent candidate Rebecca Wall, 1 minute.
Food security is my number one. Retaining our youth, bringing initiatives back for our youth, giving them initiatives to go away, education, but come back. What brings them back? We lose youth. That's the core of our area here. Employment is also really important, especially coming together with the Indigenous communities. There's barriers, and there's so much potential. The partnerships, co-stewardship, co-partnerships, co-land, and Antigonish has already done some amazing projects with Bogengek. This is our opportunity to really see that we're sitting on a golden opportunity. If we break down those barriers, we come together. This is all about partnerships. Walking along the Port Hawkesbury Wharf the other day, it's a vision. I can see it, and I can see that we just need to come together in that. So food security, bringing our youth back, climate, coming together.
Very good. Rebecca Wall, thank you. Next up, Jaime Battiste, on your priorities for this riding.
Well, the reason why Cape Breton is going through an economic boom right now is because we're investing in infrastructure. I will continue to look at investing in recreational infrastructure, economic infrastructure, as well as housing. Housing is a big concern in this area. We've got a plan to ensure that the government gets back into building more homes. Mark Carney has a plan to ensure that we're building more homes by using modern technology, using Canadian lumber, ensuring that we're doing everything we can to build more homes than we've seen since the 1940s. As well, to increase money to COA so that we can continue to support small businesses as we scale up, whether it's tourism, whether it's the fisheries, whether it's the seasonal economies. What we're going to be looking at is continuing to invest in Cape Breton. And, you know, I heard the Conservative candidate say 2 days ago that Cape Breton doesn't need more federal funding. And I'm wondering if Allan believes that as well.
Jaime Battiste, thank you very much. The only people we want to hear about are people on the stage. Thank you very much. All right, on priorities for this riding, Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. Go ahead, Ryan Smyth.
I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's the economy, stupid. We need jobs, cut taxes, put money in your pocket. We need entrepreneurs to invest, not the government to pick winners and losers. We need Canadians to do that. There are 4 ways to spend money. You can spend money on yourself. That's the best way it's spent. You can spend it on others. You don't care so much about, the value there. You can spend other people's money on you, or you can spend other people's money on other people. Spending other people's money on other people is the worst way to do it because you don't care how much you spend and you don't care about the value. When Canadians invest, that's where you get value and good jobs in that. When the government does it, they're just picking winners and losers, and they're spending other people's money on other people.
Ryan Smyth of the People's Party, thank you very much. The last of our first round goes to Allan MacMaster, 1 minute, and then we go to our open discussion and debate on your priorities for Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish and what action you would take on them if you're a member of Parliament. Allan MacMaster of the Conservatives.
Priorities, the fishery, our #1 export in Nova Scotia. Conservation, to ensure the resources there for those who've invested in it, for their retirement when they finish fishing, and for their children when they transfer that license so that it stays independent and healthy. Unlocking Canada's natural resources and the jobs they create for people here and for those who live here. Supporting the skilled trades and apprenticeship to build more of what we need to fight inflation and create better paychecks. If we can build more things, make more things, we fix the supply side of the equation to fight inflation. Healthcare. Healthcare is critical. Consumer protection, I mentioned the ideas of local food, consumer protection so the goods we're buying are well made and there's less strain on the environment. Improving cell phone coverage, at least on our roadways. Road safety, truckers, road safety. Transport Canada, I've got more.
I'm sure you do, but you're out of seconds. Let's have an open conversation now on priorities in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. Joanna Clark of the NDP, if you would kick it off, please.
One thing that I think is really important to remember is that housing doesn't matter how many homes we have if people can't afford them. So we need to make sure that when we're building homes, we're also considering the price of those homes. Are these homes affordable, or are they luxury condos? Are they going to be for people to buy and rent out, or are they going to be for people to live in long term? I think that's a really, really important point that we have to think about in every community in this riding, because that is a huge issue that people are facing.
Jaime Battiste of the Liberals.
Yes, we need to ensure that we're continuing to invest in the trades. Mark Carney's plan is to provide an apprenticeship grant of up to $8,000 to ensure that we have more carpenters, we have more people in the trades. We also need to increase labor mobility for the skilled trades people between provinces to remove those interprovincial barriers, but also expand the labor mobility tax deduction to ensure workers who have to travel more than 120 kilometers from their homes to their jobs can deduct more of their expenses. On a last note, seniors, we're going to increase the GIS to 5%. We're going to continue investing in our seniors and helping our seniors through these difficult and unstable times.
Okay, Jaime, thank you. Allan, then Rebecca. Allan?
None of the tradespeople I know are voting for Mark Carney.
Rebecca Wall.
I've traveled around this island to every pocket, every remote community there is, and I heard what the person said in the back, and drugs is a problem on our island. The only way we're going to get this off our island, this is poverty. The topics we're talking about tonight don't reach 60% of the population that is in this riding. We are talking about things that they're not even connected to. If we don't connect on a local, with local partnerships locally, we're going to lose more youth, more people to addictions and suicide, especially in our Indigenous communities.
Ryan Smyth of the PPC, then Allan MacMaster, then if anyone else wants in, Allan?
I keep hearing people
Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. Sorry about that. Thanks, Allan. You kept me on. Maybe we should hand things over. Go ahead.
Okay. I keep hearing people talking about things that are not a part of the federal jurisdiction. They belong to the municipalities and the province. And the People's Party would respect the provinces and respect the municipalities' jurisdictions. And it just, I don't know what to say about that.
Okay, Allan, then you, Jaime. Allan MacMaster.
How about the Canso Causeway, openings of the Canso Causeway? Can we not find a better balance between the need for people to travel across it and ship crossings? That is something that affects people on a daily basis around this area. It is the federal government's following a shipping act. I think it's from 1875. Surely we can find a way for people's safety
Jaime
to be
Battiste,
able to
on
cross that
your
causeway. It's a
priorities in
small
this
idea,
riding?
but important.
Another big thing is keeping our Canadian culture and heritage strong, and that's why Mark Carney has said we're going to invest in CBC. We're going to keep people informed. We're going to commit to unbiased reporting, and I think that CBC is an important thing in Canada, and that's why we're going to put $150 million into this CBC to make sure it moves forward into the future. Pierre Poilievre wants to defund the CBC.
Very briefly, Joanna Clark and then Allan MacMaster. Joanna?
I think it's important to note we do have 3 levels of government, but a way that we will ensure that we're making progress on all fronts and ensuring that people are living, have affordable living and such is if we're partnering together with all levels. So yes, everybody has their job, but we can all work together to make that.
Has to be very brief response there, Allan. We're almost out of time.
I was part of a government that gave the first increases to arts, culture, and heritage organizations in 15 years after no increases by the Liberals.
All right, we have to end it on that point. Thank you very much, everyone. Maybe take a pause to take a breath. Center yourself. Your next question is going to be on your record in the riding and in the community. Just to give you a little heads up, have a drink of water. You're watching us on the live stream on the CBC Nova Scotia YouTube page or on the CBC Nova Scotia website. My name is Steve Sutherland. This is your CBC candidates debate for the riding of Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish, which must be, I haven't verified it yet, but must be the largest, if not tied for the largest riding in Nova Scotia, going all the way from Meat Cove to Antigonish, Guysborough, all the way around to Holmville, 13,000 plus square kilometers. Your candidates are Joanna Clark of the NDP, Rebecca Wall, who is an independent, Liberal Jaime Battiste, Ryan Smyth of the People's Party, and for the Conservative Party of Canada, Allan MacMaster, in debate here in Port Hawkesbury at the Civic Centre. It's Thursday, April the 10th, 2025. If you're watching us live, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going back to the floor now on the debate. On this next point, we're going to be starting with Rebecca Wall, who's running as an independent in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. And coming off our conversation about priorities in the riding, we're going to talk about staying local now with this next topic and change the focus from this riding generally to your role in this riding. Our question is about your experience in this community. What have you been involved in? What have you initiated? What change have you made? What have you contributed that you hope people will consider when they cast their vote on April the 28th? Your topic, let's talk about your record in this riding and in this community. Starting with Rebecca Wall, you have 1 minute.
I've had the honored blessing of being included in the Indigenous communities. I am not everyone's cup of tea, I realize that. But I've had that opportunity to be nominated 3 times, suggested nominated, and then it takes 2 band members in each 3 communities under the original Indian Act to nominate me for chief. And I'm non-native, but it was the catalyst for growth. It was where it took me to this path that I had no idea it was going to go. I was surprised, I was hesitant, but I've learned so much having 1 foot in non-native world and 1 foot in Ilnu in native world. It's been a blessing. I've also been nominated and served for a short time because it was a conflict of interest. I was also manager of a business in Antigonish for a year, but I was also nominated as vice president of Tourism Association of Guysborough, so that amongst many other opportunities.
Rebecca Wall, thank you. Jaime Battiste, 1 minute on your record.
Over the past 5.5 years, I've been honored to be a member of Parliament and have seen a growth that we've had in Cape Breton that we haven't had in generations. We have an economic boom happening. It's because I've been able to deliver for this area, but also because I've been able to encourage collaboration, making sure that federal, provincial, municipal, and Migma governments were working together. When we work together, big things happen. And in my role as parliamentary secretary, I've been able, for Crown Indigenous Relations and chair of Indigenous Caucus, we've seen Indigenous investments go from $11 billion in this country to $33 billion, almost tripling. And that's part of reconciliation, advancing that, moving that forward, but also balancing this with what the riding needs. And it's always about creating togetherness, not about creating division. And I think that's what makes me stand out as the member of parliament here, is because I'm always about bringing people together and moving forward together.
Jaime Battiste of the Liberal Party. What do you want us to know about your record in this riding and in this community? Ryan Smyth with the People's Party.
I have run twice provincially. This is my 2nd time running federally on basically the exact same platform. Freedom leads to prosperity. I'm basically a hermit. I work from home. I work online. I'm a co-founder and partner in a blockchain video game company. If you know what Bitcoin is, it does for video games what Bitcoin does for money. It's probably way too much to explain. I'd be happy to talk with anyone about it, but I work online worldwide, so that's what I got.
15 seconds to tell us what motivated you to run then, very briefly.
Oh, I want to see people be wealthy. I want to see people get rich. I want to see, wealth and prosperity, and freedom is the way.
All right, Ryan Smyth of the People Party of Canada. Allan MacMaster of the Conservatives, 1 minute on your record in this riding and in this community.
The most important thing for your member of parliament to have is a heart for people when they need help or when something needs to change. I was elected for 15 years. For 12 of them, I sat in opposition. I had to be creative to get results, and when solutions seemed out of reach, I had to try to get them anyway. We got a CT scanner in Inverness. Some of you may remember that. I worked with healthcare professionals. We had rallies. We even went out and crashed a cabinet meeting in Halifax until finally the government gave us one. I supported survivors of sexual abuse, and we changed the law, the limitation of actions. The government said, no, you can't change it. Well, by the end of it, we came back the next sitting. It was passed in 1 single day because it was the right thing to do. And when you're on the right issues and you can communicate, you can get anything done. And I will give you my best here in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish.
Allan MacMaster on his record. Finishing off this first round of 1 minute each from the New Democratic Party, Joanna Clark, tell us a bit about your record in this community and in this riding, and what you would want people to know when they're making their decision on the 28th.
So I also have run provincially. I ran twice provincially. This is my first time federally. So I think I care about this riding, and I know that Antigonish is new boundaries, but I would care about that just as much because I really do think that we need rural voices in Parliament who have in-touch experience, relevant experience with what's really happening right now. I'd say my biggest contribution to my community is working on our local daycare board. When I got home from university, I wanted to be here, but childcare was a huge concern, and so I reached out to the people. I definitely don't take credit for coming up with the idea, but we worked really hard through the pandemic to build a daycare from the ground up, and we now have one in Port Hood that has after school and a full day program. So I'd say that's my biggest.
Very good. Thank you very much for the answer. An open discussion now among the five of you on your record in the community. Perhaps think about things you've initiated, change you've made, influence you've had, or what you would want people to know about your community involvement. Starting us off is Rebecca Wall. We're going for 3.5 minutes.
When Wayne Cressada passed away in New Waterford, he heard about this new girl that had Ripple Effects TV on Cape Breton Island, and he wasn't fond of that idea, and he, for a good year, was persistent at really giving me a hard time. I was invited down. I had my 4 children at that time, and Huey MacArthur called me from New Waterford, and he said, "You got to come down, Rebecca." Went down there, and I said, I don't know if I should. "No, you do. Wayne wants to meet you." Well, they didn't tell me that he was in palliative care. He was in palliative care, and I said, "Well, I'm here at the hospital." I went up with 4 kids, and Wayne said, "I need you to take over Cape Breton Live TV. I don't know what it is about you, but you're going to do something." So
I know that's a story that takes a lot of detail, but we need to move it along. Allan MacMaster, and then Jaime, and then Ryan.
I was part of a government until very recently when I left to run federally that focused greatly on healthcare and investment. New nursing homes, after a period of almost 10 years where there wasn't a nursing home bed added in the province, despite demographics which would have told anybody that we needed more of them. A new medical school in Cape Breton University to educate Nova Scotians who want to be doctors. We need more doctors. One of the best places to look is to our own young people here who want to become them.
Jaime Battiste, then Ryan, and then Joanna. Jaime?
Yeah, I'm proud to be one of the few federal MPs who've gotten a national award from a national healthcare provider. The Canadian Association of Physicians Assistants gave me an award for advocacy on their behalf in something that's primarily provincial jurisdiction. I'm proud of that around healthcare, but I'm also proud of seeing the first ever growth in Victoria County in Ski Cape Smoky. We're seeing infrastructure, we're seeing partnership, we're seeing an economic boom, and this is because of leadership and collaboration.
Okay, we're going to go past Ryan and to Joanna Clark.
So I also work with the Canadian Federation of Students Nova Scotia, and we advocate largely for policies for post-secondary education, one of those being lower or free tuition fees. We organized a lobby week in Nova Scotia, and when asked to meet with a representative on this stage, I was told that they had already met with another student group, so they didn't need to meet with anyone else. So tying that back to the medical school, if we have a government who's not willing to listen to students, students can't afford tuition. So if we have a school training doctors, but students can't afford to go, what good is that?
Allan MacMaster.
One of the other initiatives that I was involved with is government-owned cell phone towers, which are going to start coming this summer to help improve coverage on our roadways. And I know that was important. It's important to everybody, but I also work with the fire service, volunteer fire service, and communication is so important when there's an emergency and when they need to be dealing with something somewhere where they have poor communication. That's something I feel was very important and something I've been working with them and want to continue working with them if you elect me as your MP.
Rebecca Wall, you want to back in?
we met a couple years ago, Scott. I was the first one to host a mayoral debate in Sydney and handle the election during COVID. The platform now that Wayne passed on to me, we've built it up. It's in top tier. It's 1 million viewers per 28 days, 70,000 engagement. That is influence on other policymakers from here.
Okay, and one last word to Jaime Battiste. We're almost out of time.
Well, I'm proud to be the first treaty education lead in Nova Scotia history. I was able to negotiate a deal between the province and all 13 Migma communities, and it was the first time ever under a Stephen McNeil premier who said, "We are all treaty people."
Very good. Thank you very much, Jaime. Thank you all to answer that question. And it's Steve, by the way, but I've been called worse. No problem. They almost called me Scott, actually, so I could answer to either. Thank you all very much for that. Next up, a question that is always relevant when considering the future of Antigonish County, Guysborough County, Cape Breton Island, Eastern Nova Scotia, about economic opportunity. Jaime Battiste, you're going to be kicking off our conversation about this. We're talking about economic opportunity, jobs, and the potential for growth in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. What untapped potential do you see? Maybe you'd like to talk about an initiative that you've been involved in that you'd like to build on. What specific steps will you take to encourage economic development in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish? 1 minute from each of your candidates, beginning with Jaime Battiste of the Liberals.
So I think we have a great opportunity if we stick to collaboration, but we also have great opportunities in terms of the clean, green, and smart technology that we're bringing. Everwind, this is a $300 million investment that our federal government has created an opportunity for us to, in this area, have hundreds of jobs. We also have a deep port out there that could be part of the solution for us strengthening our Navy. We all know that we can't depend on the United States anymore in terms of what we need for defense. So I was there with Mark Carney as we announced that we're going to be investing millions in the Navy, building submarines. We have the great opportunity to have a naval base here in this area, and I think that's one of the things that we continue to do is build through infrastructure and continue to invest in regional economic agencies like ACOA to ensure that we're helping out small business as well.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jaime Battiste of the Liberal Party. 1 minute now from Ryan Smyth of the People's Party on economic development here.
I do love that saying, it's the economy, stupid. Oil and gas, there's lots of oil and gas in Nova Scotia. Start developing that. That makes good, high-paying jobs. Fisheries, help foster those things. Manufacturing, there's no reason why we can't have manufacturing here in Cape Breton, you know, or Antigonish or Guysborough. There's ports, you got shipping. Get a free trade zone in there. What free trade zones are is it's a special area where, you know, companies set up and they don't have to pay taxes. They're just shipping stuff in and out. Lots of jobs there. There is so much opportunity, so much room to make money for people right here. And the list just goes on and on.
Very good, Ryan. Thank you very much for the answer and the enthusiasm. Allan MacMaster, 1 minute.
Thank you. An energy corridor for the country. Think about energy that we have in the west of this country and how much it's contributed, the tax revenues. We get transfer payments every year in this province from all that activity. I know so many people that go back and forth there to work. We're not getting the price for the energy that we're producing in this country because it's not able to get to market. The Liberal government has stood in the way of that. We have to have an energy corridor so that we get the value for that, because that's good for our tax revenues, and in the end, that's going to help people who can't work, who need help from the government. The government will be in better position to help them. Shovel-ready zones, same thing. Get the red tape out of the way. Make it so when somebody wants to build a housing project, they don't have to go through so much red tape. And another thing I hear from people is start spending our tax dollars here in our country and stop sending it around the world.
Allan MacMaster of the Conservative Party of Canada on economic development in this region, in this community, and in this riding, representing the NDP, Joanna Clark.
I think this riding it's big and it's also unique. We face a lot of unique challenges that a lot of platforms maybe are missing the mark on, and we need somebody who's going to speak up on that. One really important thing is support for our small businesses that are in our communities, and also finding ways to develop year-round tourism. There's too many small businesses that are trying to make as much money as they can in the summer to store for the winter. And without those local businesses staying open year-round, there's a lot of local people that would be quite sad. So that's one thing. And another thing that's really important is rural connectivity. We do not have any opportunity if we cannot be connected to the world. We know that things have changed and the scope of what it means to work is different. And without internet access or cell coverage, it's just not possible.
Thank you for the comments. Up next, Rebecca Wall on economic opportunity in this area.
Youth empowerment, that is where the key is getting our youth together. They want to come together, and we tend to forget that we have 6 Indigenous communities in this riding. Bakangek on the mainland, Eskazoni, Bodladek, Wigoma, Wagamakuk, Malagawach. These are heavy populations in our riding. If we come together, especially the youth, cultural exchange, workshops, business partnerships, that is going to reignite. You cannot pack soil down and expect something to grow. We can talk about all these things that are beyond us, but we have to start here and irritate the soil to be able to plant something, whether it be business, farm, garden. We have what it takes to build with our hands again. We have the carbon footprint here, and we have the energy and the resilience and the creativity and the brilliant minds on Cape Breton Island and Antigonish.
Very good, thank you. All right, 3.5 minutes of open discussion and debate among our candidates on economic opportunities and what action you would take, starting with Jaime Battiste of the Liberals. Let me know if you want in. Jaime.
I think that one of the biggest things that Mark Carney is talking about is trade diversification. And we're going to be injecting $5 billion into a new trade diversification corridor fund to build the infrastructure that will help diversify our trade partners, create good jobs, and drive economic growth. The fund will accelerate national building projects like ports, railways, inland terminals, airports, and highway. And it seems like the Conservative candidate has been drinking the pure poly of Kool-Aid because you have a MP candidate in the East talking about investing in the West.
Allan MacMaster.
Yeah, and how many people here in the East work in the West on a regular basis? Once again, they're out of touch.
We want to keep them here.
They're out of touch. I was actually going to speak about housing. When you invest in housing, the labor, the materials, it's all coming from around here. Housing, we need it. The more of it we build, the sooner we can bring prices down for people who need to get into it.
Jaime, you want to come back in?
Yes, because Port Hawkesbury is talking about housing right now, and one of the things that they need is capacity. We have a housing accelerator fund that's worked all across Canada. Even Conservatives liked it, but Pierre Poilievre said he's going to cut that program. And so how do you cut programs but at the same time increase capacity for us to be able to build those homes?
Brief response to that, and then we're going to Joanna Clark.
I had a laugh the other day. After 9 years of Liberal government, Carney has just come out and said he's going to fix the Canada Mortgage CMHC Housing Corporation. It has been a problem for developers. I've heard it firsthand. And if they think they can fool us by saying, oh yeah, we'll fix that now, I think it's too little too late.
Joanna Clark, and then Ryan, and then back to you, Jaime. Joanna?
Housing is definitely a huge issue. I don't have enough time to get into it, but when we talk about housing and we talk about building housing, we need to prioritize the cost of that housing. And we can, in this area specifically, we need to think about where are people going to live all year round. We need a solution to protect renters who are getting forced out of their homes when the summer rolls around and it's time to make big money. Where do those people go? We need to have thoughts of how do we build these houses? How do we have people living in them year round?
Ryan Smyth of the People's Party, and then Jaime Battiste. Ryan?
I keep hearing about how government is going to spend money, $5 billion spent in the absolute worst way possible. The answer is for Canadians to invest, for Canadians to make businesses, for Canadians to hire people. When government does it, it's always inefficient. It always wastes.
All right, Jaime Battiste, you want to pick up a thread?
Yeah, so Mark Carney is going to be reinvesting in housing by creating a Build Canada Homes model to get the federal government back into the business of home building, to build more houses than we've seen since the 1940s by looking at modernizing our housing, by modular housing, prefab housing. He has a plan, and he's got an experience of getting it done.
Really briefly, Allan, then we want to get Rebecca in. Allan?
The answer is simple. We need more young people in the trades. We need them working where we need them working, earning good paychecks.
Rebecca Wall.
We look fantastic in a catalog in international trades. We're holding a lobster claw and a cup of tea. But we have 2 seats in Ottawa. We don't have the influence unless we come together here locally. We just don't have the numbers. That's why independence has that, and it doesn't have the restrictions that same main parties do.
All right, very briefly, last word to Joanna Clark.
In investing in trades, we need to also think about how people pay for their studies.
All right, we'll have to end it there. Thank you very much. Sorry, Ryan, we ran out of time. But you still have some more questions to go. And speaking of which, we're in the home stretch. Catch your breath, take a drink of water. We have 2 questions left. I did mention this on Tuesday that it is not an easy thing to agree to put your name on a ballot like these people have, or to get up in front of an audience and be judged and speak extemporaneously on some of the issues that matter locally, nationally, provincially. If it looks easy, it's not. So some acknowledgement for our candidates in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish tonight for agreeing to do this and for the open conversation here tonight. So Ryan, we ran out of time in the last one, but you get to open us up on this one. We're going to talk about reconciliation. A question now on Canada's relationship with Indigenous peoples. If you end up being successfully elected to this riding, you'll be representing no fewer than 5 Migma communities. Another one if you count Malagawash, including the largest Indigenous community east of Quebec in this riding. So on the issue of reconciliation, we're going to start with you, Ryan, of the People's Party. What path forward do you see for the relationship between Canada and its First Nations, especially the Migma in this riding?
I am not an expert on the topic at all. I do software. I am really not qualified, to be making those kinds of decisions. I would have to talk to people, find out what their issues are, and then go forward. The one thing I do know is that there's a problem with private property on reserves and that the rights of First Nations aren't the same, and it contributes to poverty, and it's not a good situation. I don't know a lot more. I would have to simply talk to people.
Fair enough. Politicians are allowed to say, I don't know sometimes. Thanks, Ryan Smyth of the People's Party. Allan MacMaster of the Conservatives.
I think language and culture are so important, and I think government needs to be very supportive of that. As someone who was a Gael, my grandparents all spoke Gaelic, and I grew up in a world where I only heard the odd word here and there. And it is critical that we support First Nations and their communities, their young people, to learn their language, learn about their culture, and to also, they're facing a lot of the same issues everyone else is facing. We need to make sure they have opportunities so that they can maintain who they are, but also have opportunities where they're included. And I know we want to ensure they feel involved in with the Canadian Indigenous Opportunities Corporation to provide loan guarantees to those nations who want to develop their resources, and also a First Nations energy corridor as well. So I say support them to make sure they have protection for who they are so they can...
Thank you very much, Allan. On reconciliation and Canada's relationship with First Nations, Joanna Clark of the NDP.
I also want to preface this with saying I'm definitely not an expert on this topic. But yes, there are 5, 6, thank you, Indigenous communities in this riding. So obviously this is a very, very important topic. And I think it's really important that we see reconciliation in action. We've just been hearing about it for a long time, but we need to see action. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they've made 94 calls to action, yet only 13 of those have been completed. So I think we have the roadmap of what that looks like. It's time to take action on that. One thing that I do think is really important to highlight is clean drinking water. There's still so many, even in this riding, where we hear so often on the radio, boil orders, boil orders, boil orders. Water is a right. It is a necessity. People should not have to worry about that.
Joanna Clark, thank you. Rebecca Wall on reconciliation.
I do not have all the answers. I do not claim to have all the answers, but in speaking with Indigenous, no sooner did I zip up my jacket for a funeral. In traveling to different communities, I was putting another one on again to go to another one. Federal government is up here. There is 634 reserves in Canada, Indigenous communities. By the time the in-between people have their say on where it goes, by the time that person at the bottom gets a dribble of what's coming down, that's why we see a cycle of addiction and suicide, and that's what's keeping us separate. That's what's keeping us separate from the day of Confederation when the Peace and Treaty Friendship 1752 was there. I was in PEI, I looked at the mural. It's It's non-natives. There's no natives at the table. They were here before we were, and we have to address that. Murray Sinclair said before he died, it's not our job as Native people to teach non-natives how to reconcile.
Rebecca Wall, thank you. On the path forward between Canada and First Nations people, Jaime Battiste, 1 minute.
Well, as chair of Indigenous Caucus, we've always said that reconciliation requires three things. It requires closing the gap between the way Indigenous communities live and the rest of Canada, addressing the harms caused by residential schools and colonization, and ensuring that we're looking at economic reconciliation by creating pathways to prosperity. No government over the past 6 years has done more, and I believe that's because of my strong advocacy as chair of Indigenous Caucus. We went from $15 billion in investments when I became the chair. We're at $33 billion now. We've seen the first ever Indigenous Language Commissioner. We've seen the first ever Indigenous Governor General, first ever Supreme Court Canada Justice. And we continue to build on that, and I'm going to be a strong advocate in ensuring our government doesn't take a step backwards on reconciliation while Conservatives continue to deny the horrors of residential schools.
All right, Jaime Battiste. We're going to open this up now to 3.5 minutes of open discussion and debate on this topic, starting with you, Ryan Smyth of the People's Party, if you have something to add.
Jody Wilson?
Woman, is that what you're trying to say?
How did you treat her?
I wasn't there. I was not elected. I treated her well. We
Okay,
shared
I'm sorry,
Indigenous.
I mean
we shared meetings
you
together.
and the Royal You as in the Liberal Party.
Okay, well, I treated. Me and Jody had a great relationship for the 4 years where she served as an independent,
How did
and
the
I was
Liberal Party
the chair.
treat her
Okay.
when she didn't toe the party line?
Anything you want to mention, Jaime, or anyone else want in?
And Mr. Battiste, with all due respect, there's only 11 Indigenous people in Parliament right now. That is not enough influence.
And you're trying to take a seat away from the one of them.
Anyone else want in on Canada's relationship with Indigenous people?
I mean, this is an important thing, but one of the things that we're talking about in the area, and like it's one of the issues that we need to figure out how to continue to implement treaty rights. I heard that we only fulfilled 13 of the Truth and Reconciliation's calls to action. If she has read the document, she would see that a lot of the calls to action talk about continuous funding, and you can't just check a box and say this was done. But if we look at the legislation that's been created, we've put forward United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. We've created a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and we were on our way to having a First Nations clean water legislation if the Conservatives hadn't obstructed it in the last month before Parliament ended.
Okay, action on First Nations people and the relationship with Migma in this riding. Allan MacMaster?
I'll just say that, I have friends in Wakaba. It was a community that I represented as part of the constituency of Inverness. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And I want to listen to them, and I want to have a good relationship with them, and I want them to feel well represented.
We're going to get to you in a second, Ryan. Joanna Clark of the NDP, get you in on this conversation.
So I understand continuous funding. Is there not a way to say, you know what, we commit to making that continuous funding and earmarking that funding? If you know the amount, you can budget for that.
Ryan Smyth of the People's Party.
Clean water, you've had 10 years and now you're blaming it on these guys? Really?
130 boil water advisories, but when I put forward First Nations clean water legislation that would protect clean water sources for First Nations communities like we see in Nova Scotia with Pictou Landing, the Conservatives wouldn't even let it get to Senate.
Is there something that the NDP would like to do on this portfolio that you'd like to add, Joanna?
For clean drinking water? Or just
For
in general?
reconciliation, for relationships with First
I mean,
Nations
I
communities?
think importantly here, not trying to take away from Jaime's work, it's just as a party, is everybody on board to support reconciliation as a whole and what that looks like?
All right, we'll end discussion on that note on this topic. Thank you all very much. We have one more question to go this evening, but I did want to say Thank you all very much for coming out, and thank you for making a nice environment for people to have this conversation. It's great to see such a turnout. So a round of applause for everyone here and for everyone watching at home. Thank you so much. Thanks to the Civic Center for hosting us. Thanks to our candidates. You know, elections are very busy times. Every second that you don't spend on a doorstep is a second you wish you were on that doorstep. So it takes a lot of time and preparation to do something like this. So once again, a round of applause for our candidates for being available to us. It's important. If you wanted an instant replay or wanted to relive any of the moments that you saw here tonight, it will live online. Go to the CBC Nova Scotia YouTube page. We'll also file it to cbc.ca/listen. Tomorrow by mid-morning, we'll begin airing excerpts from this riding tomorrow on Information Morning and on Main Street in Cape Breton. Also tomorrow morning, you'll hear some highlights on Information Morning on the mainland with your host, Portia Clark. And in Meat Cove, you can hear us at 90.1 FM. In Inverness, you can hear us at 94.3 FM. On Myra Bay, you can hear us at 92.1 FM. In Antigonish, we're on 106.7 FM in what must be the largest riding in Nova Scotia. So thank you all very much for your attention. And we have one more question before we send you off tonight. And thank you for watching us on the live stream tonight. I hope it was a valuable experience for you. So finally, we're going to end the night at the end of the cycle with Allan MacMaster, starting us off for 1 minute each, followed by 3.5 minutes of open discussion and debate. Our final question tonight is not about a particular platform, plank, or campaign issue. To finish, it's a question about the future and how you see it. What is your vision for this riding and for this island, and how are you going to get us there? Starting with Allan MacMaster.
Well, we face some pretty heady issues right now. We see how tariffs could suddenly come into our world and affect things very close to home, like our paper mill just down the road here, the fishery, many other businesses in the province. So we need to get past that, and I'm hopeful in the months ahead, common sense will prevail. I think, and I've been watching the stock market moving up and down like a yo-yo. One day the tariffs are on, the markets are going down, they're nosediving. Then they come off, the markets come right back up. I am hopeful we can get past that and that we can start talking about all the other issues that are important, including some of the ones that are closer to home that we have more control over. I will work hard for you if you elect me as your MP, and I will be on those issues the same as I was for the people of Inverness for the 15 years I represented them.
Representing the NDP, Joanna Clark, your vision for Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish.
I know that this riding is built by workers, by fishermen, farmers, tradespeople, service workers, and far too often those are the voices that are feeling unheard. I want to bring a rural voice to Parliament because we deserve to be heard, we deserve to be connected, and we deserve to be able to stay in our homes without having to leave for opportunity.
Joanna Clark, thank you very much. Rebecca Wall.
Being an independent gives me less restrictions than a main party. It gives me more visual presence. It gives me the ability to speak louder, especially with a media platform as I described earlier. What I see for our area is a province, a community. We know how to grow. We know how to harvest food. No matter what happens, we know how to build, repair, and maintain our shelters and our homes. We take care of our people with no one left out. That is us. That is who we are. We heal trauma and addictions that are not a concern sometimes, that are overlooked and buried. People need to feel relaxed and present in where they are in their community, and to take down the barriers to come together inclusively, all together, regardless of status, how much money, what you own, where you're from. We need to come together. There's not enough people on this island to stay separate. And in Antigonish, I'm sorry.
Jaime Battiste.
Well, first of all, I want to start off by thanking my fellow candidates for being here tonight on this stage. I thank you all for putting your names forward. At the end of the day, we have a choice to make in this election, and I've heard on the doorsteps the uncertainty of people. I've heard concern. You know, people are looking at their savings. People are looking at their tariffs that are going to harm our fisheries, that are going to harm our forestry, that are going to harm our farms. And we need a strong leader to take on these tariffs. We need someone with experience. Our team, our approach, our message, and Mark Carney's experience will guide us through this. Conservatives continue to say Canada's broken. They have slogans, they don't have plans. What we have as a Liberal government is a plan to move forward and support people, just like we supported people through the COVID days. We're going to be there for your families. Our government is committed to working for Cape Breton, it's committed to working for Antigonish, and it's committed to making sure your families and your businesses will be supported now and moving forward in the future.
On your vision for this riding, Ryan Smyth of the People's Party of Canada.
I want people to have as much freedom as possible, to be as creative and innovative as they wish, go out, make businesses, start manufacturing, have services jobs, work online. We need people to have jobs and wealth. And I think it's possible, but it's really only going to happen if the people of Cape Breton are willing, but more importantly, if the government lets them, because right now, it's the government that keeps standing in people's ways to actually go out and create wealth. And bad laws, bad regulations, if we can get rid of that, we can give you more opportunity and we can see success and wealth here.
That is our first round, or our final 3.5 minutes of the evening, an open discussion and debate. Let me know if you want in. This is your chance to get in something about your vision that you had not had a chance to mention yet tonight. Starting with Allan MacMaster.
I have an ask for all the seniors who live in Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. Turn off the television. Pick up the phone. Call a young person. Maybe your son, your daughter, your grandchild. Ask them what they think. They are our future. They have a vision. They want something different than the government they've had. They want real change. And I can bet you most of them are voting Conservative this time.
On vision, who wants in? Jaime Battiste of the Liberals.
I think that all of us can agree that we want to keep Canada sovereign and independent. We have one leader who's talking about keeping Canada strong, keeping our elbows up, and ensuring we stand up to Trump and these tariffs. We have some uncertain times in front of us. You know, we might all have different visions of what are the next steps, but we all want to keep this country strong, keeping the CBC strong, keeping everything that's fundamentally valuable about who we are as a country. And that's why Mark Carney is the best choice for leading this country now and into the future.
Ryan
Let's give him a
Smyth?
strong mandate.
Mentioning youth, very important. One of Nova Scotia's biggest exports is youth. Why are we sending our family, out to Alberta or over wherever? Keep people home. We want to keep our families together. And jobs, manufacturing, whatever it is, creating wealth, creating business here will keep our families together.
Joanna Clark, and then Rebecca. Joanna Clark of the NDP.
When we go out to the polls on the 28th, let's not forget that we're also electing somebody who's going to represent us here. Yes, of course, we need a leader of the country. But for our very riding, we need to walk into that polling station and think, who is going to represent me best at the table for Parliament? The rural voices, the working people, not who's only going to lead our country, who's going to represent this riding.
Rebecca Wall, Independent.
Yeah, who's going to stay involved, connecting with the nonprofit groups here? Who's going to keep the initiatives going, and who's going to keep the conversation going with the local people here? Again, it comes down to what we can do here. We could become the infrastructure, the leading model for for Canada, if not globally. We could become a real model for people around the world.
Allan MacMaster of the Conservatives.
It's more than about fear. It's more than about Donald Trump. It's really about the person you're electing to represent us in Ottawa.
Joanna Clark of the NDP.
I've also spent for 5 or 6 years working with university students. So when we talk about the youth, there's a connection there. There's partnerships there that I've made, and I know what the youth are looking for here, and it's opportunity.
All right, we're almost out of time. Last word goes to Jaime Battiste on this.
We need serious leadership. We need proven leadership. On election day, vote Jaime Battiste and vote Mark Carney.
And we'll end discussion on that point on vision. Your candidates for Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish, Joanna Clark, Rebecca Wall, Jaime Battiste, Ryan Smyth, Allan MacMaster. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you all. Safe home. Thank you so much for your time and attention tonight.